Back in 1987, Tom Selleck got married using a fake name. Can you believe that? Even the minister who married them didn't know who he really was. They actually forgot to bring the marriage license with them and had to rush around to fix everything before dinner time. But this secret wedding was just the beginning of his wild story. There was a huge scandal about stealing water. It's a terrible helicopter crash that killed someone on his TV show and his adopted son who got really sick from addiction. By 2025, Tom went on live TV and admitted he might lose everything he owns. This is the story of a man who had everything in the world and then watched it all fall apart piece by piece. Tom Selleck was born on January 29, 1945, in Detroit, Michigan. His mom, Martha, was a stay-at-home mom who took care of all the kids. His dad, Robert, worked as a real estate investor, which means he bought and sold houses and buildings. During that same time, Robert was also serving in the Army, where he worked on big B-29 bomber planes during World War II. Tom was the second kid in the family. His older brother Bob had been born a year before him in 1944. Later on, two more brothers and sisters came along, Martha and Daniel. The family lived in Detroit back then, which was a really big city full of factories that made cars and other things. The city was always noisy and busy. But Tom's early childhood was about to change in a really big way. In 1948, Tom was only 3 years old. His father made a huge, scary decision. He decided to leave Detroit and move the entire family all the way across the country to California. He had gotten a new job with a company called Coldwell Banker in Los Angeles. But here's the scary part. It was a commission-only job. That meant he didn't get a regular paycheck or salary. He only made money when he actually sold a house. If he didn't sell anything, the family wouldn't have any money. It was a really, really big risk to take. They moved to a place called Sherman Oaks, which back then was mostly just farmland with crops growing everywhere. Robert believed that California had more chances to succeed and make a better life. That risky gamble he took ended up working out really well. By 1960, he was making $70,000 a year just from commissions. That was almost as much money as the President of the United States was making. But even though things got better for his dad, growing up in California wasn't easy for Tom at all. Tom started growing taller and taller, way taller than all the other kids. Eventually, he grew to be 6 feet and 4 inches tall, which is super tall. Even when he was just a little kid, he was the tallest person in every single classroom. He felt really awkward and different from everyone else, and that made school really tough and hard for him sometimes. But slowly, he started turning that height into something really good instead of something bad. He joined the basketball team at his high school, Grant High School, and became a really good player that everyone noticed. He also played baseball too. His tall body, his coordination, which means how well his body moves, and his ability to focus really hard helped him get better and better at sports. But that doesn't mean his life was easy or simple. When Tom was 17 years old, something happened that could have killed him and ended everything. He was riding in a car with 2 of his friends, and they were driving down the really dangerous curves of Mulholland Drive. Suddenly, the car lost control, went flying through the air, and then crashed really badly. It was his mother's red Chevy Corvette. The accident was so terrible and scary that it became the very first story in his book that he wrote in 2024, called You Never Know. Somehow they all survived the crash, but it changed Tom forever. It made him way more careful about everything and more thoughtful about life. He never, ever forgot how close he came to actually dying that day. Even though Robert eventually became really successful and made good money. The first few years when they moved to California were really hard on the family. They struggled with not having enough money for things they needed. So Tom worked to help out. During high school, he got a part-time job working at a clothing store. He kept working at that same store even after he started taking acting classes to learn how to be an actor. He also chose to go to Valley Junior College, because it let him live at home with his family and save money instead of paying for a dorm room. Even after he got into 20th Century Fox's special acting program and then lost that amazing opportunity, he went right back to working at the store. Work was never something he thought was beneath him or too embarrassing to do. He just did whatever he had to do to survive and help his family. He had always dreamed of going to USC. which is a really famous college. But they didn't give him a scholarship at first, which means they didn't offer to pay for his school. He actually turned down a full basketball scholarship to Montana State University just because he wanted to go to USC so badly. So instead, he worked hard, saved up all his money, and went to Valley College first to save money. Finally, in 1965, he made it into USC. He got to play for the basketball team there, but he only scored 4 points total in 7 games he played. The next season was even worse. He scored 0 points in 3 games. The team said he was quick and fast, but he needed to get way better at defense. His dreams of becoming a basketball star faded away really fast. While he was studying business as his major in college, he found different side jobs to make money. He worked for United Airlines as a campus rep, which means he promoted the airline to students. His buddies from his Sigma Chi fraternity, which is like a club for college guys, pushed him and convinced him to go on a TV show called The Dating Game in 1965. Then he went on it again in 1967. He lost both times and didn't get picked. It was really embarrassing and humiliating for him. But that embarrassment somehow opened up a new door for him. A casting agent saw him on the show and gave him a chance to try out for a Pepsi commercial. He actually got the part. All he had to do was dunk a basketball on camera while drinking Pepsi. He drank so much Pepsi during the filming of that commercial that he actually got sick to his stomach. But the $1,000 he made from that one ad led directly to his big offer from 20th Century Fox. Then the Vietnam War came along and changed everything in his life. In 1967, Tom got his draft notice in the mail, which meant he was supposed to go fight in the war. Instead of going to Vietnam, he joined something called the California National Guard's 160th Infantry. He served for 6 whole years. From 1967 all the way to 1973. He worked really hard and rose up to become a sergeant. And later he became a second lieutenant after he went through training at the California Military Academy. At one point, he even had to respond and go help during the Watts riots in Los Angeles, which were really scary and violent protests. But the cost of serving was really steep and hard. While he was serving in the National Guard, Fox dropped him and fired him from their program. He had to keep his military uniform in the trunk of his car at all times, ready to be called up for deployment any second, even when he was going to auditions for acting jobs. When he came back to acting after his service, he trained at a place called the Beverly Hills Playhouse under a teacher named Milton Katselas. The training was really intense and hard. Katselas was a really rough and tough teacher. Some people said it felt more like a cult than a normal classroom. The students actually had to stand up and clap their hands whenever he walked into the room. He shouted at them and put lots of pressure on them. He even told actors to pull their own hair out of their heads to feel real rage and anger. Some people called him abusive and mean. Other people called him brilliant and amazing. But Tom stuck with it and didn't quit. He put up with everything and endured all of it, even though Tom never joined Scientology, which is a controversial religion. Many people said that Katselas was using the acting class to try to recruit new members into Scientology. To make money while he was in college, Tom worked as a model for Salem cigarettes. His tall build and clean, handsome looks were absolutely perfect for cigarette ads. Those cigarette commercials paid way more money than his United Airlines job did. But later on, when he became super famous with his show, Magnum P.I., those old cigarette ads came back to haunt him in a bad way. Reporters kept asking him questions about why he had promoted smoking to people. He absolutely hated those questions. He didn't want to be remembered as the guy who sold cigarettes to teenagers and got them to start smoking. He quietly tried his best to distance himself from those old commercials and not talk about them. Between 1965 and 1967, the dating game really haunted him and bothered him. Losing twice on national TV in front of millions of people made him question everything about himself. He told ARP magazine that it was the most embarrassing and humiliating thing he'd ever done in his entire life. His good looks didn't help him win. His charm and personality didn't work either. He started feeling like he didn't belong on screen at all and that maybe he should give up. The second loss hurt his feelings even more than the first one did. That embarrassing memory stayed stuck in his mind for many years. In 1969, he finally got a role on a show called Judge for the Defense. It was a really big break and opportunity for him. Then something absolutely ridiculous and crazy happened. He got fired from another TV show just because he was too tall. At 6 feet and 4 inches, he made all the other actors look tiny and short in comparison. The directors didn't know how to shoot and film scenes with him because of his height. One talent agent even told him straight up that his height was a major problem for his career. Can you imagine being fired from a job just because of how tall you are? It was really crushing and heartbreaking for him. For many years after that, he had to accept tiny bit parts and small roles just to stay in the acting game and not give up completely. From 1974 to 1979, he appeared in 6 different episodes of a show called The Rockford Files. He played a character named Lance White, who was a detective. It should have really helped his career move forward, but behind the scenes where the audience couldn't see, he clashed and fought with the star of the show, James Garner. Tom wanted his character to feel real and believable, but Garner wanted Lance to be silly and more of a joke for people to laugh at. They argued about lines, about the tone of the character, and about the direction of scenes. The tension and fighting was really obvious to everyone. Some scenes had to be completely rewritten right there on the set. The crew working on the show could feel the divide and the fighting between them. All the fights made the work feel really heavy and stressful. In 1972, he took a role in a cheap horror movie called Daughters of Satan. It was filmed and shot in the Philippines, which is a country really far away. The set where they filmed was really unsafe and dangerous. There was a scene with fire in it where the special effects totally failed and went wrong. Real flames came way too close to Tom. Tom got minor burns on his skin. His hair got singed and burned. The crew working there couldn't even communicate properly with the American actors. There was a huge language barrier because they spoke different languages, but they had to finish making the movie anyway. No one talked about what really happened on that dangerous set. The movie studio covered it all up and kept it secret. Tom was really scared, but he had no choice except to keep going and finish the film. In 1976, the super popular show Charlie's Angels gave him a brief shot and opportunity. He played a boyfriend character for one of the angels. But after just one single episode, he was fired and let go. Leonard Goldberg, who was one of the bosses, said that Tom's height made the angels look way too small. They also said there was no chemistry between him and the actresses. The show went on without him and became a massive hit show that everyone loved. Tom, meanwhile, had to go back to doing commercials to make money. He was so broke and poor that he only owned one suit, and he wore that exact same suit to every single audition he went to. Robert Sallin, who was the director of a soap commercial, said Tom wore that same suit both on camera and off camera because it was all he had. Tom Selleck almost walked away and quit the role that ended up making him a huge star. When he first read the original script for Magnum P.I., he absolutely hated it. It wasn't the smart, funny character that we all remember and love today. The first draft of the script made Magnum into a cartoon version of James Bond, the spy. The character had a fancy house on seaside cliffs, a vicious attack dog, and even a hang glider that had machine guns attached to it. Tom looked at the producers and said very clearly, "I don't want to play what I look like." He had already done 6 failed TV pilots before this one that never got picked up. This one felt like his very last shot at making it big. But he wasn't going to fake it and pretend to like something he hated. He told Donald Bellisario, the creator, "I want a character with humor and heart, not just action." Bellisario actually listened to him. He rewrote the entire show after filming had already started. The change delayed production and made CBS really nervous and worried. But it ended up saving the show and Tom's entire career. In 1984, while he was still married to his first wife, Jacqueline Ray, Tom met a woman who changed absolutely everything in his life. Her name was Gilly Mack. She was a British actress who was dancing in the West End version of the musical Cats in London. Tom became completely obsessed with the show. He kept going back to see it again and again and again. His co-star Jane Seymour thought it was really strange and weird. She said, "I liked Cats, But I didn't get why he went back 12 times to see the same show. At the time, the tabloid newspapers went absolutely wild with the story. Rumors of an affair between Tom and Jilly swirled around everywhere. People followed him around, followed her around, trying to prove that something romantic was happening. The funny thing is, Jilly didn't even know who Tom Selleck was at first. Her TV had been stolen 3 months earlier, so she had never even seen Magnum PI. But after the shows, they would have quiet private dinners together. In 1982, Tom divorced Jacqueline, but people never stopped asking if Jilly had been part of the reason why. That shadow and suspicion followed them both for many years. Back in 1980, just before Magnum truly took off and became huge, Tom came painfully close to playing Indiana Jones in the movies. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, the famous directors, had actually chosen him for the part. They absolutely loved his chemistry with Sean Young during the audition. But there was one big problem that ruined everything. Tom had already signed a contract with CBS for Magnum PI. He told Spielberg the honest truth about his situation. CBS didn't want to let him go and do the movie. Bob Daly at CBS was really firm and said no. No movie. Then something really ironic happened that made it even worse. A Screen Actors Guild strike in 1980 paused all filming of Magnum for 6 whole months. That was the exact window of time when he could have shot Raiders of the Lost Ark. Instead, Tom just waited around in Hawaii with nothing to do. Meanwhile, Harrison Ford took the role of Indiana Jones and became a global icon known all around the world. Tom said later on, "I didn't see myself as a victim, but I wasn't happy about it at all." That one decision may have cost him over $100 million, dollars in the long run, that same exact year. A terrible tragedy struck on the set while they were filming. A helicopter crash during filming took the life of a 33-year-old camera operator named Robert Sanders Vanderkar. The pilot, Robert Sanders, survived the crash but was badly injured and hurt. They had been filming a routine, normal ocean scene off the coast of Oahu in Hawaii. When the chopper went down and crashed into the water, Sanders dove down into the water again and again, trying desperately to save Vanderkar. But he never made it out alive from the wreckage. Tom was absolutely crushed and devastated by this death. He demanded that things had to change. He clashed and fought with Universal Studios over safety rules and procedures. He asked for more safety coordinators, backup helicopters ready to help, and proper briefings before dangerous stunts. The studios said it would cost way too much money. Tom said back to them, "It's lives we're talking about here, not just money." His stand and his fighting eventually forced big changes across the entire TV and movie industry to make things safer. By the time the show ended, on May 1st, 1988, over 50 million people watched the final episode on their TVs, but behind the scenes, where people couldn't see, it was like a war between Tom and the network. CBS wanted to cancel the show early and end it sooner. They actually tried to kill off Magnum at the end of season 7. In that episode, he got shot, slipped into a coma, and the very last shot showed him walking toward a bright light, which meant he was dying or dead. But the fans were absolutely furious and angry. CBS had to bring him back for season 8 because of all the complaints. It cost them millions of extra dollars to do another season. The budget for each episode had ballooned up to $1.2 million per episode, which was huge back then. They asked Tom to cut back on expensive location shoots, ditch the expensive helicopters, and hire cheaper actors who would work for less money. He flat out refused every single request. He said it would completely ruin the show and make it terrible. It became a constant fight and battle. Tom didn't just act in Magnum. He protected it and fought for it in 1987. Tom starred in a movie called 3 Men and a Baby. It made $167 million at the box office, which was massive. But something really strange and spooky happened. In one scene in the movie, people noticed a weird figure standing behind the curtains in the background. It looked like a boy just standing completely still. Rumors started spreading that the apartment they filmed in was haunted by a ghost. Some people said a boy had died there years ago. The legend and the ghost story grew bigger and bigger. Years later, Tom explained what really happened on The Tonight Show. It was actually just a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson that was left over from a deleted scene they cut from the movie. The movie was filmed on a soundstage in Toronto, not in a real apartment building. Still, people absolutely loved the ghost story and kept believing it. Disney, the company that made the movie, never corrected the rumor and let people keep believing it. Some people said it actually helped them sell way more VHS tapes of the movie. In 1990, Tom filmed a movie called Quigley Down Under in the harsh and difficult Australian outback. It wasn't easy at all. He had to ride horses, do his own stunts, and deal with really tough conditions. He clashed with the extreme heat, the rough terrain, and the different way that Australian film crews worked compared to American ones. Roger Ebert, the famous movie critic, liked his performance and thought he did a good job. But the movie didn't do well at the box office at all. It struggled and fought just to make back the money they spent making it. Still, Tom said years later that it was one of his proudest roles and one he was most happy about doing. When the movie Batman came around in 1989, Tom was again on the list of actors they were considering. So were Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, and even Charlie Sheen. But Michael Keaton got the part in the end. Fans absolutely hated that choice at first. Over 50,000 protest letters flooded into Warner Brothers Studios from angry fans. But the movie ended up making $411 million. It changed superhero films forever and made them way more popular. Tom turned down the role because comic book movies weren't considered a big deal back then. They weren't cool or respected. And he was still tied up and committed to Magnum. Later on, he admitted that he really regretted turning it down. In 1992, a movie called Mr. Baseball came out with Tom as the star. Tom played a fading, aging Yankees baseball star who gets sent to play in Japan. The movie was funny, but also kind of awkward and uncomfortable to watch. The movie showed all the culture clashes and differences between American baseball and Japanese baseball. Tom trained really hard for the role and learned how to play better. The movie actually became a teaching tool that real baseball players heading to Japan would watch to prepare. But the box office numbers were really weak and disappointing. Critics said the movie felt messy and all over the place. It was his first big miss and failure after many years of making hit movies. Then came a movie called In and Out in 1997. In that movie, Tom kissed Kevin Kline on screen for a full 12 seconds. That one moment completely shocked his fans and made headlines everywhere. He had been on the board of directors for the NRA, which is the National Rifle Association, and he had donated money to conservative political campaigns. People started asking if the role clashed and conflicted with his personal political views. He said back to them, "I make faces in front of a camera for a living. That doesn't make me Solomon," meaning that doesn't make him super wise or make him an expert on everything. He was just an actor doing his job and playing a part. The kiss stirred up tons of headlines in newspapers and on TV, but it also opened up doors for way more. LGBTQ+ roles in mainstream Hollywood films, from 1995 to 2000. Tom showed up in 10 different episodes of the super popular show Friends as Monica's older boyfriend. On set during filming, he had trouble understanding and doing Chandler's sarcastic tone and humor. He kept asking Matthew Perry for help with how to do it. When Perry's character tried to grow a mustache to copy Tom's famous mustache, the audience completely lost it and laughed so hard. Later, when Tom's character made a joke about it, saying, "Nice mustache," when puberty hits, it'll really kick in. The entire cast burst out laughing so hard they could barely finish the scene. In 1998, Tom tried to make a big TV comeback with a new show called The Closer, but it failed really badly. Only 10 episodes aired before it got canceled. The ratings were terrible and bad. Critics didn't love it at all. Tom was completely crushed by the failure. He took a full year off from acting and retreated back to his big 63-acre ranch in the country. He said later that the experience taught him important lessons about failure and about resilience, which means bouncing back. Then came a series of TV movies called Jesse Stone, from 2005 all the way to 2015. He starred in 9 different TV films based on detective novels written by Robert B. Parker. He even started co-writing the later movies himself. The movies were really popular with older audiences and actually beat regular network TV shows in the ratings. But then a plagiarism claim hit really hard. Another writer said that Tom had copied his ideas without permission. They made a secret settlement, which means they agreed to an amount of money behind closed doors. No one talked about it publicly or to the media. The movies kept going and being made all the way until 2015. In 2006, Tom appeared on a show called Boston Legal. It should have been really simple and easy. But his real-life role with the NRA clashed with the show's liberal cast members who had different political views. The scripts poked at and made fun of gun control issues. Tensions rose higher and higher on set. Cast members actually challenged his views and argued with him during table reads when they were reading through the scripts. Tom later said that experience was part of the reason why he stepped down and quit from the NRA. Bored in 2018, his role in 2004 in a movie called Ike. Countdown to D-Day was praised by critics and people loved it. He shot the movie in New Zealand, which is super far away. The filming days were incredibly long, to 18 hours each day. The pressure was really high and intense. And it nearly ruined his marriage to Jilly Mack. He said the filming drained him both emotionally and physically. Playing President Eisenhower wasn't just a role he played. It bled into his real life and affected him deeply. From 2010 all the way to 2024. Tom played Frank Reagan on a show called Blue Bloods. He was the highest paid actor on the show, earning $200,000 for every single episode. But in 2023, CBS asked the entire cast to take a huge 25% pay cut to try to save the show and keep it going. Tom agreed to the pay cut. He personally lost $1.2 million because of it. But still, the show got canceled anyway. He said he was really frustrated and upset. He begged CBS to reconsider their decision and change their minds. The finale episode finally aired on December 13th, 2024. He read a poem during the finale. The cast and crew all cried because it was over. But CBS didn't budge or change their decision at all. In 2015, Tom injured his knee really badly during a stunt for the show. It led to many years of pain and suffering. By 2025, he had to have both of his knees completely replaced with artificial knees. Photos that leaked out showed long, ugly scars down both of his legs. He struggled just to walk normally and needed to hold onto a truck for support. He couldn't even do simple scenes without getting help from someone. But he kept going and didn't quit. The family dinner scenes on Blue Bloods were actually his idea. He wanted them to feel real and natural, just like his own family dinners. But behind the scenes, he fought with the writers over storylines. He said that some storylines were too woke, which means to politically correct. Cast members had their own tricks to avoid eating during those long dinner scenes. Vanessa Ray once ate 17 bread rolls before someone finally told her the trick. Tom's trick was to just butter his roll and pretend to eat it. When COVID hit in 2020, all filming had to stop completely. Tom stayed isolated on his ranch. He was 75 years old at that point. He started feeling the weight of everything in his life, all the pain, his age, and fear. In his 2024 memoir book called You Never Know, he admitted that he was really depressed. The arthritis in his joints was getting way worse and more painful. He needed help just to walk around. Each day of shooting the show became a huge struggle, but he still showed up every single day and did his. Tom Selleck got married way back in 1971 to a woman named Jacqueline Ray. She was a model who stood by him when absolutely nobody knew his name or who he was. She supported him through his hardest years when acting jobs were super rare and money was really tight. For more than 10 whole years, she believed in him when no one else did. But when he became famous in the early 1980s through Magnum P.I., something changed between them. Fame hit him fast, and so did temptations. While he was filming in Hawaii, Jacqueline started seeing him on TV, surrounded by beautiful local women all the time. That was when it hit her hard. The man she loved and supported through absolutely everything was slipping away from her. Friends said he fell completely in love with the island life and all the attention he was getting. She felt betrayed and hurt. After all the sacrifices she had made for him, their divorce in 1982 gave her just 3 years of financial support, a car, and their house. That was it. That's all she got after everything. Just 5 years later, in 1987, Tom got married again, but this time, he did it in complete secret. He had been obsessed with a 25-year-old British dancer named Gilly Mack ever since 1983. Watching her perform in Cats over and over again, when they finally tied the knot and got married at Lake Tahoe on August 7, 1987, they used completely fake names to hide who they were. Tom became Tom Jenkins, and Gilly used the name Susie Mark. Even the minister who was marrying them got tricked until the very last minute when he figured it out. They totally forgot to bring the marriage license with them and had to send someone racing all the way to Reno to get it fixed before dinner that night. Only family members were there to see it. There was no media or press at all. They just used Polaroid cameras to take pictures and keep everything private. But even with all the secrecy, the marriage faced lots of struggles and problems. Tom's workaholic ways and how much he worked almost ruined the marriage right at the beginning. They even needed to go to marriage counseling to fix their problems. In 1988, their daughter Hannah was born. She came into the world on Tom's huge 63-acre avocado ranch in Ventura County, California. At first, it seemed like a perfect dream life. But later on, Tom admitted that the ranch's isolation and how far away it was from everything made things way harder than they thought. He had stepped away from Magnum PI because he felt like a ghost in his own home. He said he wanted a real life with his family, not just a career. But still, filming for other projects kept him away from home a lot. And Hannah spent many of her early years feeling alone, surrounded by animals instead of having friends to play with. They had 13 dogs, cattle, sheep, rabbits, and horses everywhere. It was a really quiet life, and sometimes it was a really lonely one too. Horses became her escape and her safe place. Without her parents' support, she said the ranch life could have drowned her and made her really sad. Tom also legally adopted Jacqueline's son, Kevin, in 1987 when Kevin was already 21 years old. But Kevin's life wasn't easy at all either. When he was just 15 years old, his mother actually thought about sending him away to boarding school because he was having so many problems. He started drinking alcohol heavily when he was in his 20s. Tom had to get him checked into rehab at the famous Betty Ford Center to get help. Even after going through rehab, Kevin continued to struggle and have problems. In 2011, he got sued over $6,000 in credit card debt that he couldn't pay back. And despite all of Tom's fame and money, Kevin couldn't seem to find his way in life. Friends said that Tom tried absolutely everything to help him, giving him money, giving him advice, giving him freedom to figure things out. But nothing seemed to work. The stress from Kevin's problems hit the entire family really hard. Kevin eventually got married and had 6 kids of his own. Sources say he finally recovered and got better. But the pain from those years lingered and stayed with the family. Back in 1988, Tom had bought that same 63-acre ranch from the famous singer Dean Martin for $5 million. But the peace and quiet didn't last very long. In 2015, the Water District sued him for allegedly stealing 1.4 million gallons of water. California was going through one of the worst droughts in its entire history at that time. There was a 36% mandatory cutback in his area, which means everyone had to use way less water. Investigators said that Tom sent a big tanker truck 12 different times to fill up water from a public hydrant that was 8 miles away from his ranch. It cost the Water District $21,685 just to investigate and prove what he did. That's the exact amount that Tom ended up paying to settle the case and agree to stop taking water illegally. But that wasn't the only trouble his ranch faced. By 2023, nearly all of his 2,500 avocado trees were completely destroyed by brutal droughts and lack of water. Even 25 huge oak trees that had been standing there for more than 100 years died. Tom, who was now 79 years old, said it completely broke his heart to see it all die. He admitted back in 2012 that making money from selling avocados had always been really tough and difficult. He once joked around saying, "I don't even like avocados. Why would I eat them when I can just sell them instead?" But by 2023, the avocado business had completely collapsed and failed. There was no business left at all. Then came 2024, which was an even worse year. Blue Bloods, his longest-running TV show ever, was canceled and ended. Tom had been earning $200,000 for every single episode, which added up to about $4.8 million for every season. But despite making all that money, said on CBS that he wasn't even sure if he could afford to keep the ranch without continuing to work. He said, "Am I set for life? Yeah, probably. But maybe not on a 63-acre ranch." The ranch was now worth about $12 million. But he had taken out $15 to $16 million in loans. Back in the 2000s to pay for things. Nobody knew how much money he still had left to pay back on those loans. Tom even offered CBS to cut everyone's salaries by 25% just to keep the show alive and on the air. He said, "We're the third highest scripted show on TV. We're winning the night in ratings." But it didn't work at all. CBS still canceled the show. By 2025, Tom's health started to completely collapse and fall apart. At 80 years old, he was barely recognizable compared to how he used to look. His friends said he looked smashed, disheveled and messy, with a big gut that hung over his belt. He had once flown across his entire property on an ATV, which is like a four-wheeler, checking on wildflowers and doing hands-on work around the ranch, but now he could barely move around at all. He had terrible arthritis in his joints. He had undergone bilateral knee surgery in 2024, which means they operated on both knees at the same time. You could see visible scars going down both of his legs. The medications he was taking, especially one called prednisone, made him hungry all the time and he couldn't control it. Depression made it even worse. He started eating fast food in secret, hiding bags of chips and burgers where his wife wouldn't find them. His friends feared that he was literally eating himself to death. At 6 feet and 4 inches tall, he now weighed close to 350